Can you hear me? All good? Okay, great. So for this debate, we have the title Fake Orgasms or White Lies, which I like. It's nice and simple. And so I thought I would take care of the pro side of establishing some definitions. Fake is pretty clear, as is, I hope, orgasm on its own. So the two together, most of what I intend on arguing depends on the kind of definition that faking an orgasm means, providing vocal and or physical confirmation one way or another that you had an orgasm that you did not actually feel or experience. The biggest thing about the debate title is the definition of a white lie. The definitions you find online generally say that a white lie is along the variation of this definition. It says a lie told about a small or unimportant matter, or that you tell to someone to avoid hurting another person. And most often the two are very correlated, where it's small or unimportant to you, you think it's small and unimportant, and then you tell it to avoid hurting another person. So the reason I think fake orgasms match that definition is for a few reasons, and I will quickly say that I will get personal in this debate, and I don't mind everyone watching it and it being public, but I just hope QallOut doesn't abuse some things I bring up for any video clips. But there's kind of two sides of it. It's my own personal side that I've experienced in this type of topic, and then there's the actual evidence-based side to it on a grander scale done by actual scientists. On a personal level, I will say that I believe this because I personally have always struggled to orgasm no matter what when I'm with any partner ever. I've been with the same partner personally for the last 5 years, and he's only made me do it a couple of times, but we actually have an open relationship, so I've still had plenty of sexual experiences with different people, and none of them have ever made me do it, and it's something I'm perfectly content with. I still consider myself a sexual person. I still really enjoy it, and my most frequent reason for doing it is I'm simply tired and I don't want to finish it. And especially the partners I do not know, I am simply not, I don't think it's worth it to explain it. But even with my partner of 5 years, I usually find it not worth it to explain it because I would really rather not ruin the moment of him enjoying it and even myself enjoying it by having to bring something up like that. I'm still enjoying it, but I maybe just want it to be over soon and want to get that over with. And that is what I really try to get across. That's why I consider it a white lie, because to me, the person kind of giving off that lie in the moment, it is small and unimportant. It is unimportant to me that I orgasm. And if it ever is talked with my partner later, then I see just how important it is to them, either gender, just how important it was to them. And it is that conversation that then makes it possibly change, but most frequently you will find that it is still considered a small and unimportant matter when really discussed with a partner.
Okay, can you hear me all right? All right. So I agree with your definitions. I think the definition, like you said, of orgasm is pretty clear, obviously, you know. And I agree with your definition of a white lie as well. It is something that is about a generally small or unimportant matter is one definition I found. I also found in the Oxford Dictionary a harmless or trivial lie, especially one to avoid hurting someone's feelings. The only thing that I disagree with about your definition is that you said it is or one told to avoid hurting someone's feelings, and I feel like that allows kind of an either or, where you could say that any lie you tell to avoid hurting someone's feelings qualifies as a white lie. I don't find that to be the case. I find especially to be a very critical part of that, because it must also be harmless or trivial. So I think for the burdens of this debate, you must demonstrate faking orgasms to be generally harmless or trivial. And I, as Khan, must demonstrate that faking orgasms actually does contribute to some larger harmful result, and thus cannot be classified as a white lie. So for that, I will be actually in the format of a simple syllogism. So I will be asserting two basic premises, which will logically form the conclusion that faking orgasms in the long run is seriously harmful. The first premise is that sexual dishonesty is seriously harmful, not only to partners involved, but potentially to other people in their lives, most manifestly the children who are harmed by divorces, which arise because of sexual dishonesty as a contributing factor. And the second premise is that faking orgasms are not only an example of sexual dishonesty, but they can also lead to worse forms of sexual dishonesty, such as infidelity and adultery, which I don't think anybody would really contend are not harmful. So as for your personal experience with faking orgasms that you decided to share, and I don't mind that at all. That's fine. Your evidence is as valid as anyone else's. I will actually get a little bit personal here, and I will say that between my wife and I, she frequently has difficulty in that regard as well. But we communicate about it, and it sounds to me that at least your long-term partner is somewhat understanding of it. And I don't see how it is helpful then to, I don't see at all how it is helpful then to lie about it. Because between my wife and I, it's well understood that at times she may not be able to climax, and she's perfectly fine with that, as you said that you are. And so she simply tells me outright, that's all right, you know, you can do your thing and I don't need to. And she can get plenty into it and, you know, have a good time without actually needing to lie to me about that.
I do want to address the burdens you brought up. I agree with them. I think that's a fair definition to kind of assume they have to combine. And I kind of see it as a white lie really has the association of excusability. So whether or not it's something we're willing to overlook with certain proper reasoning. And so I kind of wondered if this debate would go two ways. If you would say white lies are sometimes okay, but faking orgasm doesn't count, which seems to be your interpretation. Or some people may even see it as white lies are never okay, then including fake orgasms. And I'm just here to show that, well, if you have the latter opinion, it would be harder for me to argue against it, because you would just never think a white lie is, you never think a lie is a white lie, I guess. But if you do think that they are sometimes okay and this just doesn't count, this is where my argument comes in. That you mentioned that you don't really see a reason for you to do it. And that's where I really had a lot of fun researching for this debate, because there is a plethora of reasons that women choose in all sorts of different aspects. And very frequently, the only time when it is considered harmful is in a long-term relationship in which there's established communication between the two partners. And that is why I like the notion of this debate, because I see it as the default being that they are white lies. It is the action itself of the faked orgasm that is the white lie. Should it occur in a long-term relationship and have maybe unpredicted or non-predicted circumstances that lead up to it, it is what they lead to is separate from the action itself, I guess. And they do still, of course, associate with one another. But this having such a strict definition of what they lead to then only restricts the negativity of the lie to those in long-term relationships in which partners are really being harmful to one another, whereas one-night stands or just fluke scenarios, even drunken encounters, even, I hate to bring this up, but even sex workers really find a lot of benefit out of doing it. Even if they're enjoying anything, it's just a job for them. One-night stands, it's really similar. You're enjoying it, but this person doesn't mean much to you. You don't plan on going further with them. So it truly is a white lie. It doesn't harm anyone's feelings, and it is essentially trivial in that one-night sense. And that is today's day and age a plethora of sexual experiences. I don't have the data to say if it's the majority or not, but it is enough to really kind of overwhelm the argument, considering how many people are having almost, I don't want to say emotionless, but lacking really deep emotional intimacy sex. There's also evidence backing that faking an orgasm actually contributes to a woman's physical pleasure during sex. As funny as that may be, you're not actually making yourself experience the orgasm, but the almost vocal contributions you're making yourself have, and even sometimes the physical contractions you make yourself have, do actually enhance the feeling overall, which is personally why I choose to keep doing it, because it still makes me enjoy my sex experience better than what I would be by just sitting there waiting for it to be over. So there are reasons that people do it that still don't end up hurting anyone.
Should have clarified, I don't find there to be justifiable reasons for doing it. So the first thing that I want to address is you said it's only harmful in a long-term relationship, and then in one-night stands, and you even brought up sex work, which I'm not even going to get into why I don't find any aspect of sex work to be harmless. That's a whole other debate. But only in a long-term relationship. So statistics do show that the majority of relationships are long-term relationships. It's estimated that 90% of Americans will get married and divorced in their lifetime. So I would do posit that the majority of relationships which are affected by the behavior of faking orgasms are long-term relationships. A study published in 2010 in the Archives of Sexual Behavior showed that up to 80% of women admit to faking orgasms. Similar studies have shown it to be around 50 or 60, but it is consistently a majority. No matter how you slice the math, it is extremely common and tends to be dispersed relatively evenly among single women and non-committed relationships, as well as ones in committed relationships and marriage. Going down the line, according to a study published in the Journal of Consulting and Clinical Psychology in '97, men's understanding of their partner's sexual preference accounted for 63% variance in women's sexual satisfaction. So in other words, women whose male partners understood their preferences reported a 63% lower sexual satisfaction on average than women whose male partners did understand their preferences. So this is to refute you saying that it can actually contribute to physical pleasure. Maybe like in the moment, you know, you're enjoying it more than you would if you were just like sitting there deadpan, not even pretending to be into it, fine. But overall, it actually shows that if you do not accurately communicate to your partner what your sexual preferences are, which obviously faking an orgasm represents a large disconnect in what your preferences are and what you're indicating that your preferences are, because they're doing something that's not actually doing it for you and you're telling them that they are. So it indicates that there is a strong correlation between misunderstanding of sexual preferences and long-term sexual dissatisfaction. So let me see here. I had some other data that I wanted to bring up, but I think I'll save it and I'll pass the mic back to you.
Okay, a quick rebuttal I have in mind is that even if whether or not we're looking at long-term or short relationships, that's still only looking at relationships. Sex still happens outside of a relationship in general. I don't, to my knowledge, statistics on relationships don't include one-night stands. That's not usually considered a relationship academically or scholarly, which is still a large portion of sexual activity that happens for people. The data on the 63% lower satisfaction for those who communicate sexual needs more frequently is, I think, brilliant, but it may still be trivial for people, which is kind of integral to that definition of the white lie. Having lower satisfaction in sex may still be trivial for someone. It may still be worth the intimate experience to be with someone, and it may be worth the intimate experience to then fake the overall pleasure just to have the pleasure shared with someone else who is enjoying it just fine. So I just wanted to, there was a study, a faking orgasm scale for women from Temple University, said the present research suggests that some motives for faking an orgasm can be conceptualized as relationship broadening and sexual pleasure enhancing, that a broader and less negativistic view on this practice is in order. They also said that faking orgasm may play a role in or be an adaptive response to sexual dysfunction. That was a study with hundreds of women contributing their reasons for why they fake orgasms. So, of course, I do want to quickly bring up that faking orgasms has also been done by men. The study you mentioned, I have the same stats. 80% of men, well, they had stats saying that men and women, both in general, do fake orgasms. The stats were lower for men than women, but it did still happen. But of men who do report it, 80% of them report their reason being just that it was taking too long and they just wanted sex to end, and 70% of women reported it for the same reason. Within that, half the time for both genders, it was simply due to a feeling of tiredness. And that is where there was also statistically really notable influences of being under the influence of being drunk when having these experiences, or maybe not even drunk, but buzzed, inhibiting the overall ability of one to finish and to be fully enjoying the time, even though they still otherwise enjoyed the participation. They just knew they weren't going to be able to finish, were both getting tired from the drunkenness kind of hitting them and wanted it to end. This was statistically significant in both studies. And I think that's what makes it essentially trivial, is there are so many reasons that people fake orgasms that involve hurting partners' feelings, but also just wanting to appear normal, wanting sex to end without disrupting the fun, enhancing sexual excitement, again, mentioned by the University of Kansas study. All these reasons make it clear that there are too many reasons to just declare that every single faked orgasm is thus a non-trivial instance of the faked orgasm. There is clearly a reason people do it on the large at such high statistical levels that they feel like it is actually more justified in their moment, and it would have stopped by then if it weren't.
Okay, so I want to address one thing that I think seems to be coming up. You're talking about how a large amount of sexual activity takes place outside of relationships, and that in those contexts, faking orgasms is not harmful. I actually don't disagree with you there. I would think that the entire sexual relationship is relatively trivial, except from a hedonistic standpoint to both people involved, and there's not a lot of trust there, so fine, I grant you that. However, if you come back to the burdens that we both agreed upon, as you recall, I stated that I must demonstrate faking orgasms as a behavior which ultimately contributes to a larger harm that is measurable. And here I will demonstrate that. So, keeping in mind the studies that we both cited, I have a few more studies here. So you claimed that sexual satisfaction itself may actually be a trivial matter. I categorically reject that. It is actually widely accepted that sexual dissatisfaction is a major contributor to many divorces. A recent survey conducted in India actually bears this out frighteningly and revealed that 73% of women in India are sexually unsatisfied by their partners, and a whopping 30% of marriages in India end in divorce due to sexual dissatisfaction. That is not to say it is a contributing factor, that is to say it was the primary factor. Regional statistics aside, I don't find it to be very controversial statement that sexual dissatisfaction contributes to divorce, and I don't need to get into the harms of divorce. I think they are fairly well understood. So I reject that sexual satisfaction in and of itself is trivial, and I believe that since committed relationships make up such a large proportion of sexual contexts between people, I do posit that they are still the majority. I never said that no fake orgasm was ever harmless. I don't feel that that is something I need to prove. I need to prove that fake orgasms, on the whole, generally contribute to greater harm. So they cannot be said to be white lies. The behavior itself, on the whole, cannot be said to be white lies. As for it being an adaptive response to sexual dysfunction, in some cases, that might be the only option. I'm aware that some women are almost entirely unable to climax, and that is very sad. But as the studies I've cited show, communication plays a large role in sexual satisfaction, and I posit that maybe not for the majority, but for, yeah, I will say a majority, it may be a remedy that's actually making the problem worse. Picking scabs is a good remedy for them itching. It doesn't actually make the problem better. You could actually have greater sexual satisfaction if you don't.
One thing I kind of been thinking about on a more personal level, aside from the studies, is that there's this common theme of men associating making their partner finish with kind of a masculinity sense here, or almost an expectation. And I don't think there's any inherent necessity for that. It's really a shame that our society really reinforces that so much. I think that's why there's this common disconnect with women seeing it as not a big deal and men perceiving it otherwise. And that's why I actually often then feel the pressure I do to fake an orgasm, but then never really regret it and feel like overall it was better. I also do want to quickly point out that this is, even though fake orgasms may lead to one thing versus another, I am only debating the act of the fake orgasm itself here. There is nothing saying that I can't fake an orgasm with my partner, wait for them to finish, calm things down a little bit, and then say, hey, I actually faked that, and you can do this, that, and this next time to make it better for me. I just don't always want to cut off the sex and make him completely ruin his fun time by saying, hey, you're not doing it for me, so stop. So there is a utility to faking an orgasm that makes sex overall enjoyable still overall for both partners, that does not overall ruin the relationship at the same time. Faking orgasm does not at the same time mean that you cannot have good communication with your partner about why you did it or about how you did it or how often you are doing it. And this is where I'm also reminded of another study from actually 97 from Ball State. It says that this study showed that women who faked orgasm have significantly higher levels of sexual self-esteem due to seeing themselves as more positive sex partners, in combination with the statistically significant evidence that faking orgasm may play a role in or be an adaptive response to sexual dysfunction, as well as just enhancing the sexual pleasure. I see that there are just too many almost good reasons to fake an orgasm for most often women, but men report having the same reasons, whether by just being drunk and seeing it as the easier reason and something that they would rather explain later on than in the moment and ruin the fun. I see there being too many good reasons to justify faking an orgasm in the moment than to say that on the whole it is a negative thing to be doing, because there are many ways to then get back out of the in the moment white lie that was the fake orgasm to cover up with your partner. And communication with one's partner is then a essentially separate debate. The fake orgasm is itself part of the communication, but it's not the end of it at the same time. There's also many contributions to sexual dissatisfaction other than having fake an orgasm. Why someone is faking an orgasm is part of that reason. And statistically, people are not faking orgasms because of overall unhappiness with their sex. That is what I'm getting at. So if they're having sexual dissatisfaction due to faking an orgasm is because of unhappiness with their partner, which is just statistically not that common in the few studies that there are on this, which is why I do not see it as an overall non-trivial problem.
Okay, so one of the things that you brought up is that you are debating the act of the fake orgasm itself and not the harms to which it contributes. I think that is actually a complete non sequitur, because debating the harmfulness of a lie necessarily entails debating the harm that it often leads to. Okay, so I don't feel that that escape is valid at all. You said that there is often an expectation that it arises on account of sort of a masculinity trip, and women help their partners feel more confident by faking orgasm. And you said that it is a shame that society reinforces it. Well, actually, you've brought up harm there that I wouldn't have even addressed. So if it's a shame that society reinforces that, perhaps we should stop. If women were more communicative with their partners and telling them the reasons that perhaps they want to stop, perhaps they're tired, perhaps they say, oh, honey, it's fine, you can finish, I don't need to. If you're actually okay with not climaxing in the moment, there are ways that you can communicate that without perpetuating that sort of societal expectation, which if you refuse to communicate on it and you simply act that way because it's expected, I posit that you're reinforcing that expectation. As for women having a higher sexual confidence because they feel themselves to be better sexual partners, I've got news for you. It's not anecdotal evidence when they say men can tell when you're faking it. Usually you are. Usually we can, I meant to say. And it actually tends to hurt our feelings more. And thinking that you're helping doesn't mean that you are. So you may view yourself to be a better sexual partner because you faked the orgasm, but it may actually be the reverse. Your sexual partner may not have actually thought that you were that good of a sexual partner because you felt the need to fake it. That may often be the case. So just because you have a higher sense of confidence because you think you're a better sexual partner, that's actually kind of what we're addressing here, is whether or not that makes you a better sexual partner and whether or not that contributes to, as I said before, sexual dishonesty, which I feel that I have demonstrated is often very harmful.
I would say that I am still debating the harm it may lead to, but just saying that the harm it does is overall trivial because it is easily addressed after it happens. It is then up to the partners to address them, and because the reasons so often point to overall trivial reasons, such as I just wanted it to be done and I wanted you to finish it and have a good time, whether men do it or women do it, because men do often do it. It was reported statistically significantly that about, I think it was 25% of men do it, and they prefer to do it in condoms so that they can hide it. Just for the same reasons that women do most typically, just to save time, to get it over with. And should it relate to something related to sexual dissatisfaction with actual disappointment in the way sex was performed, then there is then the aftermath that a couple has to then communicate with it. And that is really short-term, long-term, one-night stand would overall still be the preferable way that things go, right? But statistically still, that's not what's happening on the whole, which is why I see it as overall something that is trivial. It is something that is not causing harm overall. I can also, maybe it's tough because from my sexual experiences, I have had the opposite of men telling me when I wasn't even faking it, oh, you just came 3 times, right? And I was like, sure, just keep going. I'd rather not. I mean, I didn't know the guy in the moment. I just wanted it. Sure, whatever. He was totally wrong, and I really did actually want to tell him, like, no, why would you think that? But while it's probably true that men do often know when it's happening, especially if they are more experienced and have just been doing it for longer, those having the most frequent and most changing sex, which is maybe why I come from this point of view, the college age students having one night stands left and right with strangers all the time. They often do not know and cannot tell, especially when you're intoxicated, certainly cannot tell and are just happy to be doing it. And so when you have statistics really backing up that both men and women do it for overall the same reason at around 70 to 80% of the time, where they really mean no harm to the partner, they really aren't even having a bad time, it didn't hurt anyone, it didn't contribute negatively to the sexual experience, and it didn't contribute negatively to the relationship with the person afterwards, you really have a trivial white lie happening there. And in cases where you do have harm coming from it, where it was due to sexual dissatisfaction, then you maybe have something bigger going on there, and that necessitates the communication afterwards. And even then, that's where I would kind of argue it's still a white lie. It's a bit tougher one, but because you may communicate about it afterwards, it's still something that I can understand people doing in the moment, that in the moment they saw it as, well, this is a white lie that I can explain later, and that counts. White lies happen all the time where we say, oh, we'll talk about them later. I just right now want to get it done this way. So there are too many reasons that these things happen trivially, and even when they don't happen trivially, they are able to be handled almost trivially afterwards, that I think still constitute them as white lies.
Okay, so one thing that you addressed is that you can often communicate after the fact. If you do happen to fake an orgasm for whatever reason, it seems to be convenient to do it in the moment. Yeah, sure, you can just communicate afterwards. The problem is that that doesn't tend to happen. That I see no statistics to bear out that that happens frequently, and I don't see that as generally what happens. It might happen in certain circumstances. Sure, that's fine, but that's actually a separate issue, because in the moment you are communicating something very contrary to what's happening. And I posit that the sexual operant conditioning which takes place in the moment when a man is, if I'm going to get a little bit graphic here, when the man is in the moment thinking you are enjoying something, and it's going to imprint in his brain that that is what you enjoy in what's known as sexual operant conditioning, and that will be what sticks more than what you tell him you would have preferred afterwards. So I feel that it is still harmful in that regard as well. Another thing is that you continually address that men fake orgasms as well. Sure, I don't contend that. I think that it is harmful in exactly the same ways, albeit with adjusted statistics for how much less frequently they do so. Once again, I do not contend that it is harmful in instances of casual sex. You've brought that up, that sure, maybe a partner can tell, but when you're in a one-night stand or you're drunk or you're with whoever, then they tend to not tell. I tend to not care. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the harm that it causes in relationships, and it frequently does.
I'm good. You can use the rest of your time.
I was aware. I just wanted to do that so that it would cut off the turn. So in conclusion, I feel that I have adequately demonstrated that the behavior of faking orgasms contributes to sexual dishonesty. Not only that it is sexually dishonest in itself, it harms communication between partners as to what they prefer, but it also leads to worse forms of sexual dishonesty. Sexual dissatisfaction is one of the leading causes of infidelity. I've demonstrated that faking orgasms contributes to sexual dissatisfaction. Sexual dissatisfaction and infidelity both are one of the leading causes of divorce. I don't think that I need to demonstrate that they lead to that. So while there may be instances in which a fake orgasm is a white lie, I do not feel that it can be generally said that faking orgasms is harmless. I think that we have enough sexual dishonesty in the culture today, and I think that statistics of suicide due to infidelity, due to divorce, due to all manner of things, due to incompatibilities and disconnects in romantic relationships, I believe that there's quite enough data out there to show that this is generally harmful, and that faking orgasms is one of many things which simply contributes to it. Thank you.